Hello, this is Madit Yel. I'm the host of Leaders in Focus podcast, a program by the Sawasawa Network Media Company, where we bring you interesting and insightful stories from South Sudanese members in the diaspora, but also back home in South Sudan, as well as friends across the world who may have an interest or something to contribute to our socioeconomic and political conversations surrounding South Sudan. My guest today is someone who has been in our podcast before, especially our first season back in 2020. Her name is Rebecca Deng. She is an international speaker, girls' education and refugee advocate, and author of What They Meant for Evil. Her latest project is Voices of Lament, a compilation of essays that she did with some of her friends. Welcome, Rebecca, to the program.
Thank you so much, Madid. Thank you. Good to see you again.
Likewise, it's a pleasure. It's been over a year since we had you on the podcast. A lot have taken place. We've rebranded from Sawasawa Network Podcast. We're now called the Leaders in Focus Podcast, but the theme's still the same. We're interested in bringing in guests and people who are of South Sudanese descent, whether that is in the diaspora in South Sudan, but also, friends and associates who have interest in South Sudan or something of interest that our members can learn from. Good to have you on the program again. It's really a pleasure. I'm always glad and looking forward to have a conversation with you. As I mentioned in my introduction, your latest project is Voices of Lament, and I understand it's a collaborative project with some of your associates. And I'm really looking forward to having a conversation around that. But if you don't mind, if you can just open our conversation with a little bit of introduction and background about the book, Voices of Lament. What does the title mean, and what is the core objective or message of the book?
Thank you. It's my honor to be here. So yes, I think last time we talked, I spoke about my work of What They Meant for Evil, which was my autobiography. And September, the book came out, Voices of Lament. And Voices of Lament is a collaboration of 29 women of color. Some wrote essays, some wrote poetry, some kind of have a kind of like a poetry, or like more like even a dancing kind of writing, because we are all different people from different background and different skills of writing. So basically the core message of Voices of Lament is that has women of color who have experienced trauma, a lot of injustice, and also as a women of color of faith, we thought that coming together and naming the issues as they are, but without despair, kind of like there's a hope. So Voices of Lament is 29 women of color writing on issues of injustice that break our heart in the world in a modern day and olden day. So some people cover like modern issues. Some people cover like historical issues. Like we had somebody that is a South Korean background and talk about the situation there and injustice that our people faced before World War II. So, and then we have Native American women talking about their tribes and how they have experienced injustice. And then you have people like me that talk about my heritage from the Nubian kingdom or the land of Kuch or South Sudan or Sudan, and all the injustice that occurred there, from war to being displaced to coming here to United States. So yeah, Voices of Lament is what do we lament in life? What have we lost? And how do we gain that back? Or what is the path forward? So it was I think it was my editor, Natasha, had the dream of bringing women of color together. And she was looking at Jeremiah, the Bible. And Jeremiah was talking about the injustice his people were facing. And then he said that bring the women to will over us, bring the most skillful women. And more, I think what he was referenced there was professional mourners, those who can move people and tell people like the way you're doing things is wrong. So that's pretty much the message of Voices of Lament. The Voices of Lament is targeting the American churches and American population, and also the international world on things that are a thing of injustice, like racial stuff, child marriages, displacement, so all of those injustice. So that's pretty much the message of Voices of Lament, is gathering people to lament over these issues.
Thank you for that background. It's really helpful in letting our audience know what the title of the book and the core message is. As you mentioned, I didn't get a chance to read the whole book, but I read your part. And I also read the introduction, and I could tell that, and correct me if I'm wrong, yourself and your co-authors, you guys are women of belief and faith. And there was also an element of racial justice and equality. And there was a mention there about the murder of late George Floyd back in 2020. And how that triggered a movement, right, or revived a movement of racial injustice in America against people of color, and mainly Black people. As the women of faith and who belong to the church, what do you think is the role of the church in resolving racial justice in America? And I know that could be, that is a wider question, but if you could just speak in terms of the church itself and people of faith, and what role can they play in resolving racial justice in America? And the reason why I'm asking that is when George Floyd passed away back in 2020, what most people could hear about was the reaction of corporate America, but also popular culture, right? As someone who followed basketball, there were a lot of Black Lives Matter, right? Themes or writings on the sides of the court, or in their advertisements and programs. There was also a lot of conversation around the boardrooms in corporate America about what could be done to support Black people and resolve racial injustice in America. And part of that was, economic contribution, whether that is giving equal access or hiring people of color into important decision making rooms in corporate America, or providing jobs, or providing scholarship opportunities. But we didn't see much about the church and what role it's playing. And so if you could speak more what the role of the church is in resolving racial justice in America looks like, and what examples could you provide on that?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and I think that's the exact same thing that we wrote the book Voices of Lament. We have seen that the church is really silent when it comes to systematic racism, and the church somehow have contributed to it. Not all churches, not all walk of faith, but church did play a role in not calling what it is. I think sometimes you can mislead people by saying that these are things of the world and we have a new Jerusalem to go to. And so if things are like people are suffering on earth, there's also a hope. But I think in the Bible, to make it super clear, even those who read the Bible, when you read the Revelation, which is the last book, it talk about new Jerusalem and old Jerusalem, but it doesn't talk about it like coming from heaven. It talk about like this is a city, a beautiful city where all different tribes and people and nations come together, and the gate is forever open. To me, that show like a freedom of in and out, freedom of ideas, freedom of movement, freedom of people really living, dwelling, but also respecting the differences. The church, however, sometimes have one message, and that message can be condemning sometimes, or could be entitlement sometimes, saying that if people are experiencing this, then it's because they are not right with God, but that was never a message of God. So our intention by addressing the issues of injustice as women of faith is to say that the American church, particularly, because this is where all of our authors come from, and also the international church in general, is not listening, is not taking these issues up, is not speaking up, is being neutral sometimes. Sometimes is you find few people, pastors or judges here and there saying this is wrong, but most of the time the church have remained silent on daring issues, especially issues of injustice, because they are hard topic to talk about, which again, that was the goal of the church when Christ came to this world, asked those big questions, but the church itself is failing. So the whole book was written to say that these issues matter. And if the mainstream people, like the sport people or pop culture is talking about it, where is the church in this conversation? The church should be leading. The church is pretty silent. We have seen that as people of faith. It's easy to talk about dreaming about where to go when this world disappeared, but we all know that it's not disappearing anytime soon. And and we have a command to make things just like they say in Lord, pray as your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. So there's a command that we do the will down here, and that will is to make sure that all of humanity and creation is restored and is taken care of, and the church is missing on that, or if they are working on this, it's not enough.
To your point, the world is here to stay, and I hope that's the case, because I can't imagine a life or a world where Mother Earth is no longer here, at least for future generations that should also come here and experience the beauty of being and living in this part of the world, or the ecosystem that we call Mother Earth. Rebecca, gender equity and equality was the theme in the book as well, that leads from the introduction. And we should make a difference between equity and equality. And what I mean by that, sometimes when we say gender equality, it doesn't necessarily mean equity, right? If I can just give a simple example that illustrates the difference between the two words equity and equality. For me, equality looks like, for example, if we're working on a project and we want to buy, you and I want to buy two t-shirts to send out the message about a project that we're working on. And obviously our bodies are different, we require different size. But I go ahead and go order 2 small size t-shirts, and that's based on my size. And I give you one, but your t-shirt size is not small, it might be large or medium. For me, that's equality. I gave you what I have, but it doesn't necessarily fit or is custom to your needs, which is you need a size that is different than small. And for me, equity would look like going out of my way and getting 2 shirts, one for the size that fit me, let's say small, and one for the size that fits you, let's say it's medium or large. For me, that's what equity looks like. And so when we say gender equality, I think it's fair to say gender equity, because it's providing solutions and ideas that are custom to each other's needs and aspirations. And so I could tell that was a theme in the book. If you could share from your experience, but also from the experience of your co-authors, in what way is there a lack of a presence of gender equity? And to you, what does that look like? And also from the perspective of your co-authors in the book.
Yeah, thank you, Madit. And you have really, I like your analogy and illustration between gender equality and gender equity. It's totally different. Like you just said, equality is making sure that you say, I'm gonna go to school. And you and I say we're going to school, and then like, okay, you guys can enroll tomorrow at school. We can be in the same class or different class, but nobody have checked our proficiency like where we should be placed. But just because you are at the school, I'm at the school, we should be equal. We have faith, but it's different. Equity, on the other hand, is customizing it, as you say. So here in the United States, everybody have a freedom to go to school. That is a rule. Nobody can tell you not to go to school. But not everybody have a safe or fully fund school, or a school that is running well in their zip code. So you can say that, yeah, there's a, you can go to school, but then it depends on what neighborhood you are in, what kind of school exists there, what kind of resources they have, what kind of transportation they have to get there. Just because things were given equally doesn't mean that it's going to have the same impact. And when you look at the thing of common good, and also the equity is to make sure that there's a customized, like you say, way of delivering services. If I say today I need to eat banana, and you say, yeah, okay, what do you want? Oh, I want to eat banana too. So it's the same. Well, bananas can come. There could be the organic one and the one that is not organic. And if we eat on this thing for a long time, I'm pretty sure the one that is eating more organic can have a different, outcome. So these are the issues we are fighting. And when we wrote the Voices of Lament, we are saying that there are these issues, and the issues are that brown bodies are more likely to be discriminated, and it's true. And the racism, discrimination from all span of life, from education to even access to safety water. We have seen the issue of Flint, Michigan, and who was in that area? Who are the people in that zip code? Mostly people of color. So that's why it's important to talk about these things, that equality, distributing things equally doesn't mean that they will do a job or the end result is going to be what we want. If we want to leave people out of poverty, not just designing all kind of jobs is not the it's not the solution, but customizing it. You can design jobs. Somebody can work in the office and make 80 grand a year, and somebody can be a cleaner and make like 20 grand a year, and the rent is the same. So to begin with, you just even defeat that equally. There's no. But customizing thing, looking at the issues, and also talking to the community, because I think equality is more like prescribing it. We give you teachers, and one is small, one is large, one is extra large, and they are given to people that are small or people that are like mismatched. Yeah, so thank you.
Yeah, no, and thank you for putting that in perspective. And I think from one of your co-authors, when I read her piece, when it comes to racial, but also gender justice and equity, I think her focus, or at least the demand that your co-author was hinting at, is committing to long-term solutions, right? Not just putting out a name there on a basketball court that says Black Lives Matter, or putting people of color on a company's advertisement. I mean, these, according to my view, look like band-aid solutions, not necessarily long-term solutions. I think the key word here is committing to long-term solutions, and I think from yourself and your co-authors, the call to the church is to also play a role and commit to long-term racial justice and gender equity. Rebecca, faith from an individual, but also from a collective perspective, was highlighted in the book when I was reading the introduction. From your perspective as a woman of faith, how has faith or the church shaped your life and outlook in life ever since you committed to the church?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. So I became a person of faith at Kakuma refugee camp. I think I was about 11 years old when about between 10 and 11. And most of most of it, or most of me becoming a person of faith, it started with just going to the church and dancing with my friends. I didn't say that I'm going to go and believe in Jesus and all of that, because, I didn't grow up reading the Bible, but going there and dancing. So it was a kind of activities with my friend. We were there. And the more I hear about the teaching of the person of Christ, the more I like to just go there. So to me, it was kind of like a story time. And then when issues, because at that time we were refugees who just came from Sudan and in a refugee camp. And there were a lot of talk about one day we will go back to our homeland. And the Bible talk about the journey of the Israelites, in the land of Egypt and how they were delivered. So there were a conversation at home that was happening that resonate with what the church was talking about. And as a little girl, I have always been curious as a little kid, just listening to stories or like understanding why things are the way they are. I will try to just gather information. So for me, going to church began as a way to be with my friend, also has a way to really understand this bigger issue, like why are we displaced? And why are we in a different people land? And will we go back one day, just like the Israelites came to the promised land? So that's what attracted me to go to church. Once I was there, I was again attracted to the issues of justice, because I have seen the suffering of my people in a refugee camp, or people that were dying back home because they didn't have access to food and medicine, or just like a normal basic human need. People were not having those things. So the Bible talks pretty much a lot about justice, like God is a God of justice and he does deliver. So that attract me to the church. Another theme that attract me to the church is the grace. Like it's a God that forgives, it's a graceful God, and it's a God that redeem things. When things go wrong, he can mend them and they can be whole again. So that attract me to the church, and the whole idea of love, like it's a loving God. I grew up in a loving family. My dad was in the military. He traveled back and forth. I didn't see him much growing up, but once he was home, there was that warmth of being loved, or being adored and treasured. And same thing with my grandmother that raised me. My mom died when I was really young, but the way my grandmother took care of me, I didn't even know I'm an orphan. So sometimes when people talk about being orphan or thing like that, the way I was raised, it doesn't even show, because my grandmother, there was no day that she ever mistreated me, or the love was just there. I was left to be a child until I was 6 when I left the village, when my village was attacked. But from ages 0 to 6 years old, I was a typical child. I play, I eat well, I was taken care of, I was being told every day, I love you, Nyanpit Button, and all of that. So those things, love is big in my life. Either that a love, that agape love, which is natural love, or love between two people, or whatever kind of love it is very big in me. And so when I hear that God is a God of love, it makes sense to me. So those things, I become a person of faith then, because of those 3 messages. And then I learn other things like forgiveness, other thing about there's a season for everything, a season of mourning and a season of suffering and a season of joy. So the Bible to me was not only teaching me or reaffirming things I have learned growing up, but was also asking my soul to be a better person. So as I grew older in my faith, I learned about things of the sin, which is like in non-biblical thing, is mistake that we make, and those mistakes have consequences. And how can you write your consequences, which is like in a church, in a Bible world, is like forgiveness and asking a repentance. But in regular everyday language, is like acknowledging you are wrong, say sorry, give distribution. If you have to pay for the wrong you have done, then make it right, make it right either by your words or your money or action. So all of those things make sense to me. And till today, I'm a person of faith. Sometimes I get frustrated with the church, but I have to remember in my mind, a church is made up of people, imperfect people like me, myself. But the word itself is clear. The word talk about doing issues of justice, loving your neighbor as yourself. That's a command. God say that love your neighbor as yourself. It's it's clear as that. So if I send my kid to school and I have a running water and my kid are eating breakfast, lunch, and dinner, I should be making sure that my neighbor kids are having the same thing too as well. And if they are not having those things, it is a command to make sure that you fight for it. So to us, it becomes to the issues of advocacy, making sure that I live in this zip code that is very rich. The roads are perfect, the schools are perfect, but the next neighbor zip code is not good. So how do we make sure that we provide resources for that neighborhood or that zip code? Yeah, so my faith influenced what I do today.
Thank you for sharing your journey of faith, Rebecca. Actually, when I was reading through the introduction of the book, I couldn't help but notice how relevant the Bible today, whether you are a Christian or a non-believer, I believe the Bible is very relevant. There were mentions there, especially in some of the chapters in the book of Jeremiah and Psalm, a calling for gender equity, where women played a role in that Christian era, but also a calling for justice where women should belong, whether that is in the circles of decision making or women playing a role in the households, where that is raising children and taking care of the community and taking care of their men and loving them. It was amazing for me to realize that those issues were there at that time. And they're also continuing to be in our modern era, and that the answers could sometimes be found in faith, and especially the book of Bible. So thank you for sharing your journey of faith and how that has shaped your outlook in life. Rebecca, I really enjoyed your essay on the Voices of Lament, titled Owning My Heritage as Queen, where you touch base on your journey here in America, but also you related it back to growing in South Sudan, and touch base on the role of women in ancient Kush, also in the liberation movement in South Sudan, with leaders such as Agir Goom and the role that they played, and also your great mother, Adul Bure, great grandmother, I should say. Speak more about your experience here in America, right, as a South Sudanese Black woman, the things you faced, some of the challenges you faced here, and how did that shape your experience living here in America?
Yeah, so so my title is Owning My Heritage as Queen, and I focus on the three women, my great-great-grandmother, Dulubur, and I mentioned Agir Gum in there. She was a commander, and growing up, I hear her name from my dad. And then I mentioned the Candace of Moore, those the Queen's mothers, historical of Sudan background. And then also just growing up as a Dinka girl in my immediate family. I talk about that and what that meant because I come from a matriarch background. Actually, my great-grandmother, that's where my mom come from. They are named after the women. And my dad's side of family are named after the women too. So when I was born into that, I didn't even realize I was being brought up with my brothers equally. And so that's why I struggle a lot in Kakuma refugee camp when there was so much division between women, like girls and boys, because when I was raised, I chat with my brothers the same. If I'm asked to do something, they are asked to do something too. There might be a division of labor, where I will be maybe watching dishes and they are taking care of other things, but we were asked equally. I didn't see a treatment between me and my boys, cousin or brothers. So coming to United States, I came when I was 15 in 2000, going to 16. And what I have learned when I landed there is that narrative of African women are mistreated and that they are not equal to men. And we see this in a lot of things. Most of the report that is coming out are report of war. Women are raped in a war. Women are post-married. Women are given up, into slavery and those things. And as I go to school and study and read all of these news, it was so different from my upbringing. And I'm like, I remember growing up in a village. I never even heard the voice of a woman crying. The one time I heard people like women crying twice. One was like a wailing cry, and then they told has somebody die. And I think that was the first time I even heard the word death, like people die, where do they go? And then there was another time I hear women wailing, and it was like some attack. But just a man beating a woman till I was 6 years old or 5.5 going to 6, I never heard of that. Now, in Kakuma refugee camp, I have witnessed those. And to me, it made me look back into my historical, where was I or my culture before? And I see these symptom of abuse or mistreating women as a symptom of war. People are stressed. Somebody just want to take, I don't know what it is, but I know that in a Dinka culture, I have not seen it in a village where they allowed women to be mistreated. If anything, even when we were running in a war, men will take women and children ahead of time and hide them, and they were in combat. Now in a Western culture, when you go to Western or Western culture or white culture, historically, women have been in combat, they fight as men. I never heard that in a Dinka culture where you will be the last people to be killed, the women and children. And that was a sign of protection. Now that story is turned upside down and it's like, oh, women are abused. And it's like, no, we need to correct that. We need to say that this is wrong. Yes, it's happening because I have seen some women. I even hear a story of a woman shot in Juba by her husband. And before in our Dinka culture, or where I grew up, that will be so wrong. And I remember even my older cousin, when they are about to get married, they will say, oh, that family is good, or that family is a women beater. You don't go there, they abuse women. So there was no endorsing of abusing women. And I knew that at the back of my head, but there were so many overwhelming stories of women are not equal with men in Africa. Men are above here and they do whatever. And then I will always reflect back. I'm like, I remember my uncles and my aunt, they cook, my uncle bring, hunted food, but there was no, like each person is just doing, there was a division of labor, but there was no issue of I'm better than you. So when I came here to the US, there were a lot of that topic, like feminism, but feminism is viewed in the lens of a Western culture. And again, like I told you, I come from this matriarch background, and I'm South Sudanese, I'm Dinka, but my family are named after women. And so why, if women were not valued, why would a tribe or sub-tribe name themselves after a woman? So we are here in the Western world, we are put now equally with men, okay? There's equality, but again, it's not equity.
It's not equity.
So you see that. So that's a challenge that I face coming here to United States as a woman of color. You are expected to like, oh, men and women are equal, but it's not true. If I apply for a job, you and I, as a male and a female, and we have the same background, let's say master degree, I assure you, you're gonna get paid 20 times more than I do because you are a man. And why is that? You know, there's equality in these countries. So again, being here in the United States is like taking it back and say that, okay, even these advanced countries that think that women and men are equal, there's a huge gap. There's a huge gap in the workforce, huge gap in what we do, careers that we study. Yeah, you see it all across.
Yes, indeed. I mean, there's always different relationships between women and men in different cultures and in different regions. And as you spoke to it brilliantly, growing up in South Sudan, right? You rarely experienced abuse against women or the girl child in your community. And you actually answered a question that I've been wondering on for a long time. It's the idea that, because I came across a lot of people from your area, like Jungle and Dinka Bor, who have unisex names that from my region in northern Bahr Ghazal would be names exclusively for women or for men. But from your region, from Dinka Bor and Dinka Jungle, there seems to be a sharing of names. A lot of names are unisex. And I was always wondering why that is the case. And I think you just answered this, the fact that in your community, women and men are treated as equal, right? To the point where people would name their boy child after, the name of their great-great-grandmother who played a pivotal, leadership role in the community, and you're proud of that and you want to carry that legacy. So it's actually good to know. I mean, and it says a lot about our community and background in terms of the gender relationships between men and women. Rebecca, on your piece as well, Owning My Heritage as Queen, you spoke about the seemingly loss of cultural heritage between South Sudanese and especially South Sudanese women here in North America. Could you explore more about that? Like, why do you think there's a loss of cultural heritage? And if that's the case, in what ways or what could be done to maintain our culture here as South Sudanese in North America?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's grieved my heart. There's a lot of cultural loss, and some of it are controllable, some are not. For example, when I arrived in 1992, ending of 92, 93, Kakuma, refugee camp, I was 7 years old. So if I didn't have family members that install in me my culture and my heritage, it will be difficult to maintain my identity just because I was in a refugee camp at a young age. And also so for me, I'm even better. I was there at a refugee camp and had some background. Some were even born in a refugee camp. So they never even have any contact of the region. They say they come from Warap or from Lake State or from Jonglei or from, Bor or from, Awil. They don't have that. They hear it, but they never been there. They never smell. They never see the trees. They never hear the voices there. Because one of the things that I realized when I went back 2009, I was in Yabus and Malakal. And then I went to Dukpayuel. Dukpadi is where my dad is from. I never made it there. And when I hear people speaking in the village, and the accent was even totally different. And they even recognize my Dinka and they say that is so hard to place you. You are not Baregazal, you are not Bor, you are not from Duk, you are not from Twi, and I realized that my Dinka, when I was growing up in Kakuma refugee camp, is influenced by all Dinka speakers, including people from Ngok, area. So with that said, there are some lots of culture that are not controllable. That is not controllable. However, there are other part of culture that are controllable, but are influenced by what the mainstream society think it's beauty. For example, I have highlighted in there the issue of skin lining product, and how people see that as beauty. Well, if you really, I don't blame those who have done that. I have actually tried when I was in high school, and I will never share the picture that that I had from that. I look like a Hispanic lady. I look yellow, okay? And this was just 1 month of trying it, and because I was like, yeah, I want to fit in, and everybody's doing it, so why not me? And then when I think about it later, and actually being a reader, I read a lot, and I say that I'm being prescribed, I'm being told my dark black skin is not beautiful and fair is beautiful. And you see even some advertisement. There was a lotion, I think back in Kenya, I never use it, but my older cousin used it. It's called Fair and Lovely, so when you are fair skin, you are lovely, and when you are darker skin, and it's not true, everybody is beautiful in their own skin. And that's why I choose the women I cover, and I talk about historical figures, like where King Solomon is talking of beautiful Black women in the Bible. Moses' wife actually came from the land of Cush. And there were a lot of issues about family members not liking Moses' wife. And later on, when you read, and it says the wife was just kind of saying, because I'm from the land of Cush. So there was a racism there where people didn't like Moses' wife because she was a dark-skinned woman. So when you look at these historical figures and King Solomon talking about these beautiful, smooth women, dark-skinned women, you know that being dark is beautiful as just being fair or olive skin or yellow skin or whatever skin color tone you have. You are beautiful the way you are. And so that's kind of like a cultural loss that breaks my heart. Where we are being prescribed what people think is beautiful for how our skin color should look like, how our hair should look like. I go sometime between to shaping my head bald, and then I go sometime to wearing it short, just natural, and then sometime I put extension. And so I just want a healthy composition around this thing. Even those who use skin lining, it's not that they are bad, but it's to say the consequences of health issues, health risk. It's extremely expensive to begin with. It's number one. Number two, it's not good for your skin. You might end up one day when you reach to a late 40s or 50s having a skin cancer. So it's not even regulated. It have a lot of hazard chemical in it that are not just so good for you. So exploring this, but also seeing it as a trend, it's like me using extension. Somebody might want to use a little bit of that, but it's to say, even for me, what are the cause of extension? When come summertime, come like April or May, I normally shave my head super short. The entire summer I wear it short. I'm saving money. And then when it's cold, because I'm in Michigan, I braid my hair because it helped me with being warm. But because, my genetic thing, I was born in Africa, my ancestors are from there, so my hair was short to deal with the cold. And as I am placed in a modern world that is cold, I need something to keep me warm, So those are the things that mourn my heart, like that kind of loss of culture. Another loss of culture from my own way of seeing is that beauty of dancing, like bringing different, like Kakuma refugee camp, I grew up there. There used to be a war refugee day, and there will be different cultures of people from South Sudan and from Sudan and Rwanda, like dancing. So I miss that culture of expressing ourselves in a non-verbal way, beautifully and majestically, moving, singing, dancing, wearing different colors and all of that. We don't see that here. You see it every now and then with like community gathering, but it's not the way it used to be, where you will just go and dance for hours. So how do we bring those back? It's being intentional. Maybe one day South Sudanese diaspora say, hey, we need a center. And that center will have a cultural activities once a year or twice a year. And we will have people to come and teach different dances. And actually, we can raise, because communities raise money, we can raise money and pay those people. Because it's about time you pay people for the talents, that is the skill. But most of the time, what we think is better, like there's a tap dancing, right? You can go to tap dancing or salsa dancing, Hispanic dancing, and you pay for it. But if I want to learn how to do Aga dancing or Nuer dancing, then I don't pay for it. What does that even communicate? It's like if you don't value what you have and pay for it, then that's how you lose culture. But young people might go if they see older people like me trying to learn and pay for it. They're like, oh yeah, I'm gonna learn and look good, and then modernize it a little bit so it's attractive to them. And not too much talking, but just really dancing, and maybe put in some hip hop moves to it, or like yoga, whatever move to it. And it can help us. We can preserve our culture like that. So it will be a little bit watered down here in the West. But then maybe one day, if they go back to the traditional or original villages where their parents come from, they can see the authentic one, the one that have been kept and not influenced, and then it will be not too foreign to them. They will have a little bit of background. Yeah.
Yes, I mean, there are challenges, right? We live in a different world, and the challenge is to assimilate, right? Get accustomed to the culture here and adapt, but at the same time, you want to maintain your cultural heritage, right? And so there's a competition, whether that comes to in terms of time or in terms of resources. But I agree with you, right? We have to be intentional about, right, and make an effort to actually keep our culture, which is beautiful. And that's what will identify us here and help us, thrive in America, because as people say, it is a melting pot. And the reason why it is a melting pot is everyone brings their own, cultural heritage from wherever they come from across the world. And I believe that South Sudanese and recent immigrants coming to North America and the United States in particular, I believe that's what will help us, occupy space in this melting pot called United States of America. So I applaud you for being interested in having ideas of what that could look like in terms of maintaining our cultural heritage. Rebecca, we're coming to the end of our episode. As I said earlier, it's always a pleasure speaking with you. You always bring in insightful ideas. You're working on really interesting projects that I believe a lot of our community members can learn from and perhaps reach out and collaborate. But before I will let you go, if we can just end it on a motivational note and ask you on a personal level, working on these amazing projects, right? Sharing your story, whether that is through books or speaking, and engaging in goals, child education and refugee advocacy. Why do you do that? Or I should say, like, what motivates you to do all these interesting projects and opportunities that you're involved in? Like, what motivates you to do all these interesting things?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's a broad question, but also it makes sense to me. I think why I do what I do, because like background, again, I study international development and social work, and was gonna go looking into working with the UN and USAID. And then I did theology as a master's and organizational leadership, not knowing that I would write. But, I have been told by my professors or those who have read some of my writing that you have to write one day. So I start writing, and it makes sense to me. And I might one day start dancing, and it will make sense to me if I choose to, or maybe try to sing, and I don't know where it will take me. But I have, like I say in the beginning before, I'm always like a curious person. And I get bored with doing one thing over and over. So I'm a creative person. So doing one thing, like there are some people that are logical or structured, like they will do something over and over again and focused for a long time. For me, I can do that only with writing and maybe listening to music. But the rest of the stuff, I need a mix up. And even when I'm at home and working on something or writing, I will write for like 30 minutes, 20 minutes. And then I'll have to get out and like open the window, be outside for 5 minutes, looking at the birds or just whatever, you know, or like texting with a friend and then come back and work on it again. So with that, it have given me a way of looking into life or profession that there's no fixed profession. Right now, I do a lot of work around health, you know. During COVID-19, I become a community connector, making sure that people are connected with the resources that are in the environment. Today, when I came from the library, I was just working on a project, actually mapping out by zip code, like what kind of resources are there, what kind of hospital, what kind of grocery store, what kind of transportation. And sometime by looking at zip code, you can tell what kind of housing. Is it mostly apartment, high rise, or a single homes? Or, you know, in some neighborhoods, sometimes you will drive for 30 minutes and there's no liquor store. It's just a lot of parks and walking and houses. And then some neighborhood, you go there and every single step there's a liquor store. So what does that communicate? That by itself is setting people up to fail. Because if you are walking in a neighborhood, every single corner, you can grab a drink. What are the young people gonna do? You are setting people up from that versus another neighborhood, you will drive 30 minutes and maybe the only thing you will see there is DW, which is like a more organic food. And some neighborhood is a lot of chips and things like, so by even designing it that way, you are certainly setting up people from that zip code to have a kind of different lifestyle. So yeah, I do what I do because I'm a curious person, Second, I just think that there's a beauty in having a diversified knowledge and skills. Now I do believe in competence, you know, I really do believe in competence. I don't want a writer like myself to come and treat me as a doctor. No, you have to have a competence of that, you know, as a doctor. And I will not take my writing and ask the doctor to proofread it. That's not his competence or her competence. I will ask a writer. So I do believe in competence, yet I believe in diversifying your knowledge and your experience. And I think really if humanity pay attention, it really boils down to like, do I feel accepted in my environment? Do I have basic needs? And we can go all around it with different ways, looking at it in medical term, looking at it in statistic math term, looking at it in the social behavior terms, looking at it in a language term, you know, because I believe that people are more likely to take in information when it's from their heart language. And even me as a Dinka speaking, I know that I already have a deficiency because my first heart language, I don't even know how to read or write it. I do know how to speak it, but deficiency in a term that I don't know how to read and write it, or having terminologies that are deep, you know. So I believe in, just customizing things and customizing your knowledge. If I go to this thing, why am I doing it? Doing a lot of my own research and also speaking with people, talking with people. The language is huge, whether that a language in terms of numbers or term of words. You know, like for example, you can try to describe something. You just asked me to describe what is in my book, and I say 29 women. That is a quantitative kind of description, and then I'm like, these women are talking about these thing, and they are women with different background or different competencies. That is, qualitative, like quality of it, what is a person bringing. So there's different way of describing things. And with that, go to, is the way you're describing something to somebody, does it make sense to them? And for example, today I was just reading an article that talk about most people that go to see the doctor, 60 or 70 something percent, or even I think it was more than 0.5%, walk out not even understanding what the doctor just communicate to them because of the terminology that the doctor was describing. It just come in and out and go overhead, because it's like above their competence or terminologies that they normally do. So what are you really giving to people? And again, we look into that, into services. When you say, hey, I am an aid worker, I'm providing South Sudan 2 million or whatever to do development. Why is that? And is that money, is it gonna go, is it prescribed to the people, or did you ask the people? How do you arrive to give that figure? And if so, who are the people to carry out the money or implement it? Is it you or those people, or is it only few people that are in Juba and maybe they are not in the village? And is it going to, so it's just like a lot of, I just look at information and I think a lot, and then read more, and then talk to people. So yeah, that's where my background of doing so many different things come from. I think it boiled down to my curiosity about how thing works. I don't believe I know anything, I know a few things, but I don't know tons of things. So that call for always doing a lot of research and listening to people and seeing how people see it, because the way I see it is not, we all have biases. And because of my upbringing, because of my gender, because of my education, I might always have biases. So I have no idea about a lot of things. So the only way to keep myself being knowledgeable is being curious and reading a lot or doing different things. Thank you.
No, thank you for sharing that. I know that can be a personal question sometimes. And, I've heard a lot that curiosity begets opportunity. So it's a good mindset to have. And that will definitely lead you to working and pursuing a lot of exciting and interesting projects that can help you grow as a person and as a professional as well. Rebecca, this is coming to the end of this great episode. Thank you for coming again. This is our second time having you on our podcast, and it's always a pleasure to welcome you back and having you share your story as well as any latest projects that you're working on. How can our audience and people connect with you, and especially where can they find the book, Voices of Lament?
Yeah, thank you. So you can find me on Facebook, Rebecca Deng, or you can find me on Instagram, Rebecca Deng, R-I-V for Victor, K-A, Deng is my username on Instagram. Voices of Lament, you can go to voicesoflament.com, or if you go to any of my Facebook page, I have personal and public page, or also my Instagram, you can find some of the link that I have shared there. Or just Google Voices of Lament. It is on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, and wherever books are sold. So you can find it there. And what I would add for the Voices of Lament, it is a beautiful book. And you will learn a lot of different stories from Native American women, African American women, Haitian American women, South Sudanese women, Korean American women, all over Peruvian American women. It is a beautiful work of different issues of injustice and issues of praising too at the same time. So it's not just all bad thing. There's a lot of joy in it too.
It's a great read indeed. I was able to read the introduction, but also your essay, Owning My Heritage as Queen, which a beautiful, great read. Thank you again, Rebecca, for coming in. This was another great episode with you, sharing your story, but also sharing your latest book project, which you are a contributor to Voices of Lament, and your part Owning My Heritage as Queen. Thank you very much to our audience for tuning in. Please, we will publish this episode on all of our audio podcast platforms, wherever you find yours, whether that is Apple Podcasts, Android, Spotify, or Anchor FM. We also launched a YouTube channel where we will post a video version of this podcast. Please leave us a review, subscribe, like, and let us know what do you like about our programs and how we can improve. And maybe if there is a guest that you're thinking about that would be, make a good guest on the platform, feel free to reach out. We'll be happy to have them on the podcast. Again, thank you for tuning in. And for now, take care of yourself and somebody else if you can.